its mouth and chewing at the back of its mouth without bringing that food to the front. All the way at the back of its mouth it's chewing all the time the cud that it brings up from its stomach. These are the front legs, like the hands of the cow, and these are the back legs. The front and the back legs have three sections. There are two knees, or two elbows, let's call them, in the front. This is the upper elbow and the lower elbow. And the top of the arm is here. Later, when we'll open the cow, we'll see how it's hung onto the shoulder blade. The top two sections, the upper part that's hooked onto the shoulder blade, that's called the zroya, plus the middle section. The lower section is called an arkuva. And below the arkuva, you have the two separate toes. The separate feet, these hooves are split completely. Shoisas, shesa, shtei process. The cow, like all animals that are kosher, walks on 8 feet, grips the earth with 8 separate feet. They move independently of each other. Technically, the middle section is called the shaik, and the uppermost section is called the yorech. Okay, the yorech is what we call in English the thigh bone, and it's hooked on by a ball joint, which we'll see later, called the buka de atma, onto the pelvic bone, the etzem ha'alya, the hip bone. It also has a bottom section called the arkuva with 2 separate toes coming. The word arkuva is also used to mean a knee. The knee joint is called arkuva. So that the word arkuva is used for 2 things. It means the knee, and it also means the lowest section of the leg. Technically, of the 2 knees, the upper one is called arkuva, the lower one is called arkum with an ayin, and the bottom section is also called arkuva, but to distinguish it from the upper knee, we call it arkuva hanim keresim arosh. By the way, when I speak of this shaik and the zroya, we refer, of course, to the mitzvah satayra, where every animal of chulin, tefkishachten, requires that you give the zroya, l'chayayim, and keva to the kohen. We refer to the right zroya, not to the left zroya. This is the left side. This is the right zroya. It's given to the kohen, as I said before, is the right upper 2 joints according to the Tanakama, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, the middle section of the leg. And the chazeh is this piece of meat from the base of the neck down to a line between the feet. In English it's called the brisket. That's the chazeh. The zroya l'chayayim and keva, which is given from a behem of chulin, refers, as I said before, to the right zroya. Given some machlokes to Tanakam and Rabbi Yehuda, whether it's 2 sections or 1 section. The l'chayayim is the lower jaw, including the tongue and the cheeks, this area, both l'chayayim, not just one. The keva is the 4th stomach, which we'll see later when we open up the animal. It's one of the most valuable parts of the animal because the 4th stomach contains the enzymes from which cheese is made. Whoever gets the keva could go into the cheese business. You can see the 3 sections of each leg. The uppermost section, the middle section, and the lowest section. And here are the 2 knees. The same thing for the back. Here's the large kulis, the shaik bone, and the arkuva bone over here. And here are the 2 toes coming out from each one. This is the uppermost of the 3 sections of the leg bones. 1, 2, 3. This is the kulis, the bone of the yorech, and this is the bone of the shaik, and this is the bone of the arkuva hanim keresim arosh, and the same 3 sections you have for the forelegs, which are the hands. This, by the way, is the shoulder blade or the collarbone, to which this is the collarbone, by the way, and this is the shoulder blade. The uppermost bone of the forearm is attached to these 2 bones. Inside of the animal, from the base of the neck till the thigh, all the way at the bottom of the animal, there's a large a large space that's filled with different organs. It's divided into two separate chambers. The front chamber contains the heart and the lungs. The rear chamber contains the various stomachs that a cow has, the intestines, the liver, the spleen, the pancreas, and the kidneys. It's important to note that the lower section, the rear cavity of the animal, is separated from the upper cavity by a sheet of tissue and muscle called the diaphragm. The diaphragm expands and contracts to help make the animal breathe. The diaphragm is called Yoseres HaKoved. The diaphragm, by the way, you see the muscle and you see a membrane. Right over here, just cut open the abdominal wall, and this exposes certain parts of the stomach. Upper chamber, called the chest cavity, is surrounded by ribs. There are 13 ribs on each side. This, which I'm moving my hand over, is called the rib cage. It's a wall made of ribs. Same thing is on the other side. On the bottom is the etzem hachoze, called the sternum, the bone that joins the ribs in the front. And on the back is the spine, the shedder, where the ribs are joined to on top of the animal. The ribs form a cage, but the cage is conical shaped. It's shaped like a cone. It comes down till here, but it curves in a cone-shaped form towards the top, so that my hand now is going to the highest part of the diaphragm of the Yoseres HaKoved. The diaphragm is shaped like a cone. My fingers are touching the top of it and now sliding along the inside of it towards the end. This is the end of the diaphragm, this tissue over here. Peeled in away, we'll see the ribs. Cut through certain meat, which is known as the xolim. The xolim is the flank meat over here. It's in the hindquarters of the animal, and there's a certain chaylev which goes along the xolim, which we'll see later. Good. This is the liver.
Yeah.
Lying against it. This, by the way, is the etzba hakoved, which the Gemara speaks about. This lobe of the koved. This, the etzba hakoved. This is the gallbladder, which is the mora. Gallbladder collects the bile that the liver produces, which helps in digestion. That bile is called mora. I'll show you a very interesting thing now. This which I'm pointing to on top, this fatty covered thing, is the chaylev al ha-kloyos. This covers the kidney. As you know, the chaylev al ha-kloyos, as you see, runs along the surface, and then this is the kidney. We'll peel it away and we'll see the entire kidney later. The two kidneys are attached to the spine. This here, covered by chaylev. Chaylev runs along the meat. That's why the Torah says that shtei hakloyes v'sachaylev asher aleihen asher al haksolim. It runs along the xolim. This meat is called the meat of the xolim. And it runs down the inside of the animal until it goes up till the diaphragm. That's why there has to be nikur, the removal of the chaylev, all the way up till the rib. Here's the entire liver. Diaphragm.
Kaved, Yoseres.
Right. Here's the point, by the way, at which the liver is attached to the kidney. The liver is attached to two places. see when I cut away the diaphragm, how this very same chaylev goes along the rib. That's why the 13th rib is left with the hindquarter, because of the chaylev. This is the liver. This is the gallbladder.
Ah,
This is the fourth stomach of the cow, and we're going to see all these stomachs. At the end of the fourth stomach, there's a valve, this thick piece that's called the pylorus, and there's a little piece of intestine that goes out that's called the reish moi, which is in English the duodenum, the duodenum. It goes up, it arches up towards the gallbladder, and there's a tube that removes the bile from the gallbladder and injects it into the duodenum at this point so that it could flow into the intestine. This is the kiss that holds the keva, and this is a chaylev. We're opening this up now. This membrane, by the way, has a rich circulatory system. It carries nutrients to the stomach. Here is a vein. There's little capillaries running all over it. On the other side. Over here. We'll see it when we turn over the animal a little bit more accurately. This is the dakin, the small intestine. Okay. Sanya divi. Sanya divi was sometimes used to make kishke. That's the appendix. And this is the hadra de kanto, the smooth kishke, which sticks around a glob of fat. This fat is shuman, it's not chaylev. And this hadra de kanto is inside the back and is surrounded completely by the curly small intestine. This is the rectum, the chalchailas that removes the final waste from the body. We get a good view of the abdominal cavity. This is again the diaphragm. Here's the kidney attached to the spine, the roof of the abdominal cavity, with the chaylev covering the kidney, going down along the xolim. And here's the other kidney, by the way. This is the kidney on the left side of the animal. The right kidney is always forward. The left kidney is backward. Now, the organ over here is the pancreas, the toil halava. The pancreas is right near the gallbladder. The pancreas supplies digestive juices, pancreatic juices. The gallbladder supplies the bile that it collects from the liver. And all this is caused to enter the duodenum. We'll soon see later exactly how it works. This part of the intestine, the beginning of the intestine, this is the pylorus, the end of the stomach, which releases the food into the intestine. It travels here, the duodenal arch it's called. It goes right near the liver, and the common duct, and which brings the pancreatic juices and the bile, enter it right over here, and all that goes into the small intestine. And we have here the fourth stomach, the keva. Very, very large in a newborn calf. The fourth stomach, the keva, is called a bow, a keshes, in the Gemara. The outside of it is called the kashta, and the inside, the yeser, the ayasra. There are two types of chaylev. One on the outside. This is the outside chaylev. And one on the inside. This is the yeser. The Gemara says that in Eretz Yisroel, they were mounted to eat the yeser, the ayasra, but they asered the akashta, the outside curve. In Bovel, they were noig iser in both, the ayasra and the akashta. This is the keva, the pylorus. With my right hand I'm holding the hemsis. Later we'll open it up and we'll see. There's a small tube, it looks like it's part of the keva, but it's really not. There's only a small opening that lets it into the keva. The rest is just membranes that connect it. There's a small door that lets it into the keva. Here we have the Basic. Let me cut open the Basic and you'll see the cups lining the side of the Basic. I don't know why it's called Basic.
Okay, go ahead.
See the cups?
That's the inside of the basic
The inside of the Basic, that's why it's called Basic, the house of cups. In English it's called tripe. Okay, from here it goes into the, there's a little opening, a tiny little opening, that takes it into the hemsis. This is the hemsis. It's the opening of the hemsis. Okay. Let me open the hemsis.
The basic crisis is really just a valve system that lets things either go to the hemsis or to the keres.
No, the basic crisis, more than anything else, pushes the food back towards the veshet when the cow...
Oh, from the keres back to the...
Right.
But nothing like stays in the basic crisis.
No. But the basic crisis acts also as a filter. It catches all the nails and the impurities that the animal eats, and that's why you bite it, the basic crisis. Very often the animal is treif because of the basic crisis. You open up an animal, you find needles and nails, and if they penetrate the basic crisis, it's treif. Of course, you could examine. This is the wall of the hemsis. A very interesting wall. The hemsis goes into the cave. I'll show you something that you'll appreciate. This is the lining of the keva. This is a layer of spit, mucus. This is one of the most marvelous organs in the body. The animal, here, you see the spit here. The animal eats all types of foods which are digested. Even if it eats meat, it's digested by the digestive juices. The lining, this interesting lining of the keva, produces pepsin and renin and hydrochloric acid. Right? And this could burn up and turn to nothing, meat and anything.
And you get an
So
ulcer.
the kasha is, why doesn't it burn up the keva itself? Why doesn't it burn up the stomach? The stomach is also a piece of meat. So the teretz on that is that the Banishlo put on the lining of the stomach of people and animals a wall of mucus, of spit. And that acts as a buffer between the strong corrosive acids and enzymes that chew up and eat up all the meat, and it protects the wall of the keva itself. And when all this mucous membrane goes all the way down here, past the pylorus, so as to protect the lining of the end of the stomach and the duodenum. There's less mucus in the duodenum. That's why when there's an ulcer, the mucous membrane is eaten away, and once it's eaten away, even at one teeny little spot, so the corrosive juices could touch the stomach, it could cause bleeding and all kinds of
Would that
damage
make
to
a
the body.
treifer?
If there's a hole, it would make a treifa. A hole, nekuvas hakeva, the masha who makes a treifa. Nekuvas hakeva is a very dangerous thing. It lets the corrosive juices in there, and it could just eat up everything. This most wonderful organ, this mucous membrane, a sea of spit of mucus. It just protects the animals. And all these different linings produce different acids and enzymes and everything. It's not so in the hemsis. The hemsis just acts as a chamber in which the chewed up food waits to be released into the hemsis. There's some partial digestion, very little that takes place in the hemsis, but it does not have a mucous membrane. the keva that has everything. And the keres has no mucous membrane and no lining. It's just a chamber where the food rots. There's a slight mucous membrane in the keva also, slight, but nothing in the keres also. It does protect the wall of the keres because there is bacteria. The bacteria cause the rotting. Okay, I forgot to emphasize before that attached to the left side of the keres is the troil, the spleen. That's attached to many blood vessels, and the blood filters through the spleen. Okay, the spleen withdraws dead red blood vessels and other impurities from the blood. The main filtering, of course, is in the kidneys, but the spleen filters out a certain amount of the blood. Okay, so here's the keres, the sarcoisis, hemsis, and the keva, all open and exposed. The basicosis, by the way, has two skins, a red one also, and a white one. You could see clearly the tripe, the white skin. There's a clear separation. I don't know how accurate you can get it with this camera. It's not as distinct, but it's just like the veshet. The reason is because the outside one is a muscle that squeezes the food back into the veshet. And because there are two skins, so the halachos of treifos are different for the basicosis. And if a needle penetrated only one skin, it's not treif unless it penetrated both skins. As I mentioned before, there are many needles and shilas found in the basicosis, because since it's the first thing that that hits the veshet as it emerges from the diaphragm, so if there's a needle in the food or a nail, it lodges very often in the basicosis. During the peak of an animal, we're biting two things, the lung and the basicosis. That's it. Because the basicosis has many treifos. Okay, by the way, originally we saw that the basicosis was attached with membranes to the whole hemsis, and the hemsis was attached with membranes to the whole keva. I opened the membranes and indicated the separateness of the hemsis and the keva and the basicosis. Because of their attachment, we could understand the Maimer in the Gemara. The Gemara says, hemsis u basicosis she nikvu l'chutz. Nikvu l'chutz means that there's a hole going outside. But if the hole goes from the hemsis to the basicosis, even if it goes through the connecting membrane, it doesn't make the animal treif. Because the only thing the worst that could happen is that some food material will flow through the hole, through the artificial hole, the naked caused by a nail, which of course isn't what the Rebbeinu Shalom planned. It's really supposed to flow through that special tube that connects the two. But it still wouldn't kill the animal if there's a hole that connects the hemsis and the basicosis. By the way, there's some chaylev that has to be peeled away from the liver. Most of we peel away this white, fatty material from the liver. It's not real chaylev, but it's yoinik min ha-chaylev. So there's a lot of this on the underside of the liver, the gate of the liver, the portal area. So this chaylev has to be cut away. There's chaylev deraisa though on the liver. There are we'll start from the top, the aseres hakoved, the entire diaphragm goes in this ve'ach. The etzba hakoved, along with the yoseres. This is the etzba hakoved. Now, according to one mandomer, it goes along. The sac in which the keres was held, which is the chaylev hachoife sakeres. We could have seen it a little bit better before. That's called the chaylev hamachasas hakerev. The sac that covers the keva, that's called hachaylev asher al hakerev. Right? It's no longer in the sac. I peeled away the sac before. Right? Some of the chaylev that covers the dakim, that's a machlokes Rabbi Yisroel and Rabbi Akiva. We had that big sac of chaylev, that big membrane that covered the entire dakim. I peeled that away before. That membrane is the machlokes Rabbi Yisroel and Rabbi Akiva, whether that's included in this kol hachaylev hamachasas hakerev. the two kloyas, the two kidneys, plus the chaylev that covers the kidneys, plus the chaylev that goes down to the ksolim. Here is the ksolim. This meat, this is the shank meat, the meat through which the git hanosha runs, which we'll see later. It's part of the leg. But this is the kessel, the flank, the wall of the animal itself, which is one of the walls of the abdominal cavity. It's called the ksolim. The chaylev that runs along the ksolim over here is the continuation of the chaylev shal hakloyes. Ve'eis shtei hakloyes v'es hachaylev asher aleihem asher al-ksolim. Out of all these parts that go in the animal, two parts that go in the mizbeach, out of all the parts that go in the mizbeach, two parts are mutter to eat because they're bosar, they're not chaylev. And that's the kidneys, which is bosar, and the yaseres hakaved, which is bosar. We eat the yaseres hakaved. If you ever enjoyed a good piece of tenderloin, it's the yaseres, part of the diaphragm. There's another piece of tenderloin, which is not part of the diaphragm, which we'll see later. Now, as far as chaylev goes, it's important to know the different chalovim. The membrane covering the stomach, the keres, the main chaylev, that's a chaylev hanachases hakerev. This is the last bit of it, we cut most of it away. The chaylev covering the keva is called es kol hachaylev hanachases hakerev. This is the outside chaylev, the akashta, and this is the ayastra inside. The chaylev covering the kloyes, shtei hakloyes ves hachaylev asher aleihem, asher al haksolim, it goes to the ksolim. And also it stretches towards the front. Here is a continuation of this chaylev. It goes under the diaphragm, and this itself is also a continuation of this chaylev. This over here is the end of the chaylev. Right over here, you can see this. This is the end of the chaylev asher al haksolim. It hits the 13th rib, and it has to be scraped away from part of the ribs. This is the natural position of the liver. At this point it's attached to the kidney, and there's a tiny piece of chaylev, the raisa, which is attached to the liver right over here, and it must be cut away from the liver. The bottom part of the chaylev, what I said before, is the rabbanan, it's yonik min ha-chaylev. The top part over here, which is actually attached to the kidney, contains a piece of chaylev deraisa. That's where the spot where nikur has to be made on the liver. The keres, the vesakaisis, the hemsis, and the keva, the reish moi, which is the duodenum, going past the liver and picking up the digestive juices from the common duct over here, going into the daken, the curly daken. This is still the same canal that will go straight through all of it. And here it goes up to this point, keeps curling, where it gets to this point with the appendix. From here it goes into the smooth kishka, this is the sanya divi, the smooth kishka, the hadur de kanta, keres, and the besakoisis, if there's a hole in them, and the besakoisis, the hole has to go through both iris. This is the double skin of the besakoisis. You see the red and the white skin. This is the hemsis, if there's a hole in the hemsis leading outside, and the same thing with the keva, nikav hakeva. Here's the daken, the neck of mashahu, is matja, also in the daken. Let's cut off the duct. Neck of mashahu, a small hole. In the Hadura de Kanta, by the way, a nekev is not matrif because there's shumin, there's fat, that's not chaylev, and we have a klal shumin toher soisim. Shumin toher, which means kosher fat, is stuck to the tissue on which it's resting, and this whole blob of fat here is shumin toher, and it's soisim, which means that if there's a hole, so we consider the hole to be blocked off by the shumin, and the hole is not matrif the Hadura de Kanta. Now, after all that, it leads into the chalchailas. This is the chalchailas. You can see the whole large chalchailas. This part of the chalchailas is nitrif with a nekev mashahu. Right? As it leads off the Hadura de Kanta into the chalchailas, you can see here's the Hadura de Kanta getting thicker and coming into the chalchailas. This part where the chalchailas runs between the thigh bones, so if there's a hole, it does not make the animal treifa, because that's chalchailas shenikva, or even shenikra, the yerechayim mamidas oisa. It's the yerechayim, meaning the thigh bones hold it and prevent anything from leaking out. It's not a treifa unless roiv of it is torn away, or at least part of it that's not protected by the yerechayim. The liver, by the way, a hole in the liver does not make the liver treifa. It's only if the entire liver is missing kavod shechoser. There has to be a kazayas left, but the gallbladder that has a hole in it does make it kosher. It does make it treifa. Nikiv hamora makes it treifa. It's a schematic diagram of the digestive system past the kavod. This is the kavod, and it leads into the duodenum, which goes to the back, and then to the curly backen, and past the sanyadivi, to the appendix. This is the point. Sanyadivi is like a blind sac that comes out from where the dakin joins the Hadura de Kanta. This is the smooth kishke here. It's sort of inside the curly dakin that surrounds it, and that leads into the chalchailas over here, which carries the waste out of the back. Part are the thicker part. This part is thicker, and this part is thinner.
Show it flat towards me. Right.
Okay, the thicker part is the part that's attached very strongly, very tightly to the calves, and the thinner part is not attached that strongly. The tchoil is on the left side of the animal. If you have a hole in the tchoil, right, the sumche, so it's a treif. We're matrif any hole in the tchoil. Okay, puchis, which is the bladder. No? So puchis, if it has a hole, it's not treif. The hole will heal it itself up. As you're looking here at the spine, you see the roof of the back of the animal, which is the two kidneys with their chaylev.
Show me the kidneys clearly.
Well, let's peel. We're going to peel off the chaylev and we'll have the kidney itself. I'm now working my fingers between the two kidneys. This is the spine, and let's take out one kidney with a chaylev asher olav.
That's chaylev deraisa.
That's chaylev deraisa, right. I covered the kloyas. This is the kulya. Okay. The adrenal gland is perched right on top of the kulya. And here it is. Here's the kidney. The kidney has a charitz inside. This is the charitz. This is called the loiven hakulya. This is the charitz, the crack inside the kidney in which there's loiven, this white material. Okay, this is the loiven hakulya. The Gemara discusses it. Here. Actually, what I was pointing to before was Chaylev covering the Loiven HaKulya. This is the Loiven HaKulya. This is the Chritz opened up, exposing the inside called the Loiven HaKulya. Kulya is the singular of kloyes, which means a kidney. And before I pointed out a tiny drop of actual Chaylev right over here, where the liver is attached to the kidney. I explained before that the upper section of the leg is called the yorech. Now, the yorech is the bone with all the meat surrounding it. The bone itself is called the kulis. We'll speak about that later. The top of the kulis bone has two parts to it. It's a straight bone, a very thick bone. One is shaped like a ball. That's called the buka diatma. And it's seated inside a circular spherical socket in the pelvic bone, which is called the etzem ha'aliyah. That hole the Gemara calls miduchte, the place of the buka diatma, duchte. Another name it's called the kilboisis, the hole in which the spherical, the ball joint of the kulis is situated. The other end of the kulis, though, protrudes and it's shaped like a spoon, the kaf. That's the kaf hayorech. The gid hanoshe is the sciatic nerve that comes out of the spine. It comes out in three sections from a bone called the etzem haparshios, the sacrum of the spine. And it joins together to form a very thick nerve, and it goes right down past the kaf hayorech. And we'll now peel away. The skin was cut, and this outer muscle, the sirloin it's called, which covers the yorech. This is the gid hanoshe. This white material over here is the gid hanoshe. This is the main gid, which is the raisa.
Left hand is blocking.
Okay. This gid hanoshe goes right over the cuff.
Go ahead.
This is the gid hanoshe over here, this white nerve. That's what it is. It goes right across the kaf hayorech. This bone is the kaf hayorech. We'll take out the whole kulis and we'll see the buka diatma, the shof miduchte, which means if it slips out of its place. That's another one of the treifos. This is the gid hanoshe coming out of the spine right over here, where my finger is pointing. You can't see it too clearly. Goes past the kaf hayorech, and then it splits off. Midrabanan, all this is also, in order to eat the hindquarters of the animal, all this has to be cut away, including this material, which is called the shuban hagid. This is the rabbanon. It's called the shuban hagid. The Gemara says the gid has no tam, and begin with nice tam, according to one mandamer, but the shuban hagid has tam, and that's also osir. That has to be cut away. Here's the gid coming out of the bone. This is the etzem haparshios, that part of the spine where the gid comes out of. Okay. Let me put a napkin from behind you. Okay, this again is the upper bone. I said before that with the meat around it, it's called the yorech. The bone itself is called the kulis, and it has a kaf and a buka diatma on top, and we'll see all that right now. This is the meat peeled away, and expose this top bone, the kulis. The kulis has the kaf over here, where the gid hanoshe goes past. This is the gid hanoshe going past the kaf. This is a perfect sphere, which is the buka diatma. You should see this over here. This is the buka diatma, the round ball joint, which fits into a hole. This hole is into the pelvic bone, which is called the etzem ha'aliyah. We'll all come over. Could you focus over the
Yeah. I got it.
You got this over here?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, if you see inside, there's a white string.
Take it up.
Here. You see this popping out from the
It's
inside?
something blocking. Yeah,
Look.
now I see it, yeah.
Right? That's sort of a tendon.
Uh-huh.
This white string is called the niv. If the book of the Atma is dislocated from duchte, from its place, which is also called the kilboisis, I said before, and the nive are rotted away, the akil nive, like the Gemara says, that's something that makes the animal a treifa and even an avela. My book of the Atma to shaft the duchte, it jumped out of its place, the akil nive. Spine runs, as I said before, all the way down the back until it comes to the tail. Through the spine runs the chut hasheder. If the chut hasheder is cut through, the animal is treif. We'll see the chut hasheder running through the spine in a minute. But it's not all the way down. It's just till a certain bone called the etzem haparashias, the bone that has coming out of it a few different nerves that join together to form the gid hanosha. I wasn't able to keep the whole gid hanosha here, but this is one of the nerves that escape from the etzem haparashias. This bone here is the etzem haparashias. Here's 1, 2, there are 5 or 6 holes. This is a very huge bone. From here to here is the etzem haparashias. The Gemara says that it's up to the first or second or third hole, that's till where the treifos of the chut hasheder is. One of the chulyas, one of the sections of the shedra. In fact, this is the beginning of the section, no, this is the one next to it. This is the last section before the etzem haparashias. Right after here begins the large one, called the sacrum, in English called the etzem haparashias. This is what they would call the lumbar vertebrae. This is one chulya, and this is another one. This is the chut hasheder, the spinal cord running through it. You see the spinal cord is cut in half. It's running through the shedder. Inside, there's a skin around it, right? That's the krum, just like by the brain. There's a krum, we'll see later that there's a skin surrounding the brain. And inside there's moyach, there's a brain. Inside the chut hasheder, there's white matter and gray matter, just like by a brain. It runs all the way down. Now we're going to peel away the diaphragm, the seres hakaved, and we're going to enter the upper chamber of the body where the heart and lungs are. We're going to cut through the ribs of the wall. They form the wall around the chut hasheder, around the upper chamber, the lung chamber. So first let's cut away the diaphragm.
The seres.
Yes, there is. Now, it's very important to mention that this skin that's on the outside of the seres must be peeled away during the nikur of the behemoth. There are 2 skins. There's a skin on the outside, on the inside of it, and there's a skin on the outside. This is the skin on the inside, this is the skin on the outside. And there's the meat in between called the tenderloin meat, or the meat of the seres. The skin on the inside is not chaylev. The skin on the outside we say is yoinek min ha-chaylev, and we have to peel it away. We can't leave it. It's called the shlim in Yiddish. We have the lung, and inside the lungs is the heart. The heart is enclosed in a kiss, peritoneum, with the pericardium. Okay, cut this open, and we'll have the heart. And inside the heart, this is the heart. Branches off to the arteries, to the shoulders. Now, the heart, if it has a hole, it's treifa, but the hole has to go to base chaloloi. Chaloloi means to one of the chambers inside. There are 4 chambers inside the heart. There are 2 large ones that are called chaloloi hagodol. This is the left ventricle. This is the aorta. This is the left, and these are the right ventricles. Okay? Now come on. This is the left ventricle. This is the other side of the left ventricle. The septum of the heart. This is the right ventricle, and the right ventricle pumps blood into the pulmonary arteries, which take blood to the lungs. The blood returns to the heart through the atrium, the atria, or the auricles, the little ear-like devices up on top of the heart. Here's a vein that's entering the heart. The veins are soft. You'll notice the arteries are hard and thick, and the veins are much soft. This is a vein entering the auricle, and the room inside the auricle called the atrium. This is the upper chamber. The upper chamber of the heart is very small, and it plops down into the ventricle, from where the heart gives a squeeze and shoots the blood out into the rest of the body. The big hole is called the cholol hagodol.
So what?
The big holes, those are called the cholol hagodol. When we say nikiv, the cholol hagodol, this is what we mean. This is the artery coming out of the right side of the heart, called the pulmonary artery, which leads to the lungs. The blood is pumped out from this side of the heart and it's pushed up through this into the lungs. This is a different tube coming out from the left side. This is the aorta, the main artery. The blood, when the heart pumps blood, it goes out through here to the rest of the body, outside of the lungs. This is a branch, the first branch of the aorta that takes blood to the arms and the head. These are veins bringing blood back from the lung, which is already fully oxygenated, into the left side of the heart, and it drops from the upper chamber, called the left atrium, down to the left ventricle, where it's pushed out through the aorta. The back of the lung is called the aruga. There are two things run down the aruga. The veshet runs down the aruga, and the aorta, the main artery, taking away blood from the heart, runs down the aruga. Veshet and the main artery. The kone halev goes down through the shumen ha'aruga. Right? This is the right side of the lung. This is the left side of the lung. The right side at the bottom is the uma yamonis. This is called the aruka va'ova. Aruka va'ova. This is the emtsoyas, and this is the mispat. This is the mispatzelis, the uppermost una. It splits and it curls around the neck. The mispatzelis.
Show it to me again from the top.
The mispatzelis.
Yeah.
The emtsoyas.
Yeah.
And the aruka va'ova.
Yeah.
And the uma yamonis. We have the elyoina. Is the uma elyoina. The shucha kachetz. And the uma smolis. On the underside of the lung, this is, by the way, the thyroid gland. This varda is shaped like a rose. It's called the inu nisa de varda, or just varda. So, how many lobes are there in the lung? 2 large ones, 5 on the sides, 2 on the left and 3 on the right. There's 7, and the varda is 8. When the shoichet shechs the animal, he must make afterwards bedikas pnim. The boidik pnim sticks his hand into 2 small holes that are cut into the diaphragm. The stomach is opened up, and he pushes his hand into a hole in the diaphragm. On the right side, he feels around the varda, he feels around the 3 unois, he feels around the uma, to see if there's any sirchas, any lesions or adhesions, pieces of tissue that attach it to the wall of the chest cavity or to each other. Then he puts his hand in through the left side, and he searches the lung on the left side to see if there are any sirchus on the left side. He does this very carefully. He marks down any sirchus that he finds, and then they remove the lung from the animal. They give it to the boidik chutz, who examines it very carefully outside, and very often, if not always, blows up the lid. The view of the right side of the lung. He's the kone entering the lung. These three sections are the unois, hayamin. This is the mismatzeles, the emtsoes, and the eruka v'ova, and this is the large umo yamonis, the large right section. This is a view from the left. Over here we have the two unas of the left side. This is the front. This is called the elyoina. This is the meshucha kachetz, and this is the una, the uma smolis. By the way, this is the mispatzelis. The mispatzelis curves around from the right side to the left. It curls around the gargaris a little bit, and it curls around onto the left side. This dark spot in the middle is the heart, which is enveloped by the lung. Mispatzelis again. The emtsoyes, and the eruka v'yova. We blow it. Sometimes if there's a little sircha, we peel it off and then blow it up and see if there's any air escaping. And to determine accurately if there's air escaping, we put the spot in water and see if there are bubbles coming out into the water. The pipe breaks up into different branches. The branches are the bronchial tube, right? Bronchial and branches is the same word. Each branch goes into a different section of the lung, so that since there are 8 sections, there are 8 main branches, and then the branches break up into smaller and smaller branches. Each of those branches are called sympoines, a singular sympoin. Okay, it's a tube, is a sympoin, like the word symphony, which is a tube. Music that's made from tubed instruments. Now, Reb Shimon holds that a hole in the lung is nothing, doesn't not matter if the lung, ad shetinakav l'beis hasimpoines, till it goes all the way through and reaches a tube. We don't pass him like that. We say any hole going through the outer and inner skin of the lung is enough to be matter. The lung has 2 skins around it. It's very difficult to separate the outer and the inner skin. But if there's a hole only in the outer skin, it's kosher. If there's a hole only in the inner skin, it's kosher. Sometimes when we blow up the lung and we see air between the outer skin and the inner skin, the lung is still kosher. This is the krum ha'elyon, the outer skin of the lung. The krum ha'tachton is very thin. I don't know if the camera could catch the krum ha'tachton.
Yeah.
The krum ha'tachton is the skin that, here, we have the krum ha'tachton.
Hands in the way.
1 second, let me get, no, it's very thin, Here's the krum ha'tachton. The krum ha'elyon is heavier, and the krum ha'tachton is thinner. You could see along the lines where the lung splits apart traces of the krum ha'tachton. Sometimes only the krum ha'tachton has a hole and the air escapes between the 2 krumim and causes bubbling. It's kosher if nothing comes out of the krum ha'elyon. The main tarfas that we look for in lungs are sirchos, shinoi mare, and now let me define a few things. When the lung is laying flat,
Go ahead.
when the lung is laying flat, so part, it looks as if there's a cut. These are 2 separate lobes, right? This is the aruka v'ova, and this is the uma yamonis. But when it lays flat, they just fit one on top of the other, and it looks as if there's a cut between them, as if a knife went between them. The space, the surfaces that touch each other, as if there was a cut and they had been attached previously, is called chituche de une. Okay? The emtsoi has 2 chituche. The emtsoi lies on top of the mispatzelis and the haruta v'yova. This is the emtsois. This is the chituche de une. By the way, here the emtsois is completely stuck to the mispatzelis, but it's nisrach kesidroi, and there's nothing wrong with such a sircha. It's stuck to the mispatzelis. This is a sircha with the two sections are stuck, but it's all nisrach all the way, and it's nisrach kesidroi. This is called the chetucha diyuna. This surface over here, where they were stuck together, it looks as if it was cut. This entire surface is called chetucha diyuna, and the surface on this side, where it's stuck to the harut of the ova, is called chetucha diyuna, and this surface on the bottom is also called chetucha diyuna, where it's stuck to the uma. This thin line is called the shipule reya. If there's a pimple on the shipule reya, it's treifa. Good. This is also called the shipule ha'uma. This is called the shipule de'una. There are shipule all along the reya. The bottom thin line of each section is called shipule. There are many treifos which are only matter if the long at the shipule. Right. The left side is the elyoina and the meshucha kachetz. The right side, the mispatzelis, the emtsois, the eruk v'yova. On the underside, the varda. It's a pity we peeled away the little skin that was covering the varda. That's called the kiss havarda. Right? Where the varda lays along the rest of the lung is called the chritz.
Hands in the way.
Okay, the chritz havarda. Agav urcha, it's kedai to point out over here. These are the ribs. Right? This is the last 13th rib. This is cut off, and it's put with the hindquarters. There is some chaylev from the kidney that touches this rib. The 12th rib and the 11th rib and the 10th rib are different than all the other ribs because you have to remove this chut that runs on the outer side. By outer I mean the side towards the higher numbered rib. It has to be removed all along these three ribs. 12th, the 11th and the 10th. Some of the surface meat has to be cut away from the meat between the 12th and the 13th rib. All this has to be done very carefully by an experienced menakir who favors the menakir the animal. Anything beyond the 10th rib that is towards the chest has no chashash of chari. This is the meat of the chazit. This is the part that goes to the kohen by a korban shlonim. The chazit is shon. Picture of the rings. Each of these are the tabois. You get a better picture of the tabois now. Okay? The tabois and the kona together are called the gargeres. Okay, peel away the krum. Krum is a membrane from the outside, and then you can see the tabois. The veshet from the lung. By the way, let's take another look at the veshet. Remember we said shnei oiris yeshel veshet, hachitzain odem v'hapnimi lovan. I'm going to cut it down, and you'll see. Now with the white oil, could you see the red oil as it opens?
Keep it still in one place.
Okay. This is the food pipe. The outer row of the red one is a muscle, by the way, and it squeezes the food down and squeezes the food up, as we said before. The white one is a lining, so that the food can flow and go very smoothly. If there's a hole in the veshet, it has to penetrate both oiris. If it only penetrates the inner oir, it's nothing. However, if we see a kite, a thorn that penetrated the oir, so we have to be boidik the outside oir, and it's very difficult to be boidik the outside oir, because according to Rashi, even for a nekev, the oir hachitzain, you can't be boidik. So if we see a kite there, so very carefully we could be boidik, check the oir hachitzain to see if there's a hole. We're not soimach of this bedika, and anytime we see a kite that goes completely through the inner oir, we're matir the animal. The veshet. Okay, the shchita is performed by taking a knife and cutting approximately at this point. The knife is brought across, and a cut is made back and forth. Halacha is a cut away from the shochet. Havo is when he pulls the knife back to him, and he cuts it open. He cuts through the kone and the veshet below the kone until he comes to the mafrekes. This bone is called the mafrekes. This is the spine, very thick sections of spine and the neck. The shochet has to watch out for the chomish hilchos shchita, the 5 halachas. He has to be careful not to press the knife down in a chopping motion, which is called drasa. He has to be careful not to insert the knife below the simonim and cut outward, even if he cuts in a sawing motion. That's called chaloda. And any other way in which the knife is hidden is also called chaloda, if it's hidden during the shchita. He has to be careful not to interrupt the shchita, that is to start and pause and then start again. That's called shehiyah. There's another one of the Hilchos Shchita called ikur. Right? According to Rashi, ikur is when there's a pegima, there's a nick in the knife, and he makes an improper shchita. And according to the Bahag, ikur is when the simonim are ripped out. Here we have simonim that are a little bit awkward, as you can see, because of what we did to the animal. The simon is not attached to the mafrekes through the membranes that connect it. So the simonim are awkward. This would not be enough to spoil the shchita, because it has to be awkward all the way down in order to be called awkward to spoil the shchita. The 5th halacha, which is more important to our demonstration, is the halacha of hagroma. That means you cannot shecht past a certain point. Past a certain point up toward the head, and past a certain point below. Now, we don't have that section anymore, but the hagroma, no one ever gets near the lowest section of the kon and the veshet during the shchita. But we'll examine the uppermost part, which is very important to learn in detail. In fact, the first thing we'll do is to cut open the skin over here and get to the top of the kon. As you see, as we open up the skin along the simonim, the kon and the veshet, you see the membranes that connect the kon and the veshet to each other and to the neck. Those are the ones that are ripped apart where there's ikur. Right.
You see the kana, where's the veshet?
The veshet is just behind, right here's the veshet. We'll pull it separated from the kana. These we see. Here's the veshet. You recall the shtei oiris, right? So that a few times. The red skin on the outside of the veshet, and we'll just peel it inside out, and we'll see the white skin. This is the oyer halavon on the inside. Okay. You got a clear picture of that?
Yep.
You see more and more of that. The food goes down to the tube over here. As you can see, there's a tube. This is the food pipe, and this section of the neck is just behind and attached to the back of the windpipe. I had explained earlier that the windpipe is not completely closed. Okay? So that when large blobs of food are pushed down the veshet, they're able to expand and force their way into the windpipe. This is the gargeris. You can see clearly each tabas. You have that?
Yeah.
Each individual tabas. Each tabas is only 3/4 of the way around. Here you see a muscle at the top, a red piece of meat surrounding a section of the tabois. Underneath this muscle is the tabas hagdoila, the highest ring. These are cartilage rings, and cartilage, by the way, in the Lashon HaGemara is chois, samach ches vav samach. That's the material that the hard part of the ear is made of. It's called cartilage or chois. The tabois are made from this. The highest one is the tabas hagdoila. It's covered by a red muscle, And it's the only tabas that surrounds that is completely round. It's closed in the back as well as the front. This is the widest part of the voice box. Okay? It's shaped like a helmet. And it slopes back towards the top of it. That's why this is called the shipui koiva. A koiva is a helmet, a hat. The entire section, this section here is called a koiva. This is the widest part of it. Where it slopes back is called the shipui koiva. At its widest part, it covers the vocal cords. We'll open it up and we'll see later the shnei chitin, which are two little bumps inside of this voice box, and they're called the shnei chitin, which are the vocal cords. Al bidin, that's the highest place where the shechita could be done. The tabas hagdoila is underneath this. Now, I have to retract something I said before. The muscle is here. This is a gland. This is not a muscle. This red thing over here is a gland. This is a muscle covering the tabas hagdoila. This gland covers some of the highest of the regular tabois. This is a muscle covering the tabas hagdoila. Here is the bump, the widest part of the koiva, covering the chitin, which is the vocal cords, and this is the shipui koiva. On top right over here, and we'll see in a minute, is the koiva cotton. Rashi calls that mechulin, which covers the windpipe so that when the animal eats food, the food shouldn't go down the windpipe. It covers it very tightly so that the food should go down the veshet instead. We'll see exactly how that works. This is rooted into the base of the mouth. Right over here where I'm pointing is the base of the mouth. Put your finger in here, you go all the way back and come to this spot. The air enters over here. When there's breathing, there's a tube that takes it to the nose, and another opening which goes to the mouth. It enters over here and goes down this tube to the lung. Yeah. This is not the back. This is the tongue. This over here is the last piece of the tongue. This is not the back of the throat, this is the tongue. Okay, the food comes down here, and it goes through here, and it goes into the food pipe. Here's the food pipe, it goes all the way down here. This is the veshet, behind the corner. You'll notice that there's another hole over here. What's this other hole? This leads to the nose. When the air comes, it could either go through the mouth here, and it could go through here. Now, I said before that food comes down here. There's no food that comes through the nose, right? But in case there's liquids that come down from the nose, they could find their way to the food pipe. That's why when a person has some material in his nose, it goes down into the food pipe. See? Food could go through the mouth into the food pipe, and food could go through the nose into the food pipe. Now, this over here is the koiva cotton of the epiglottis. And you can see it. It covers the kone. If you go through here, you don't go through the food pipe, but you go through the windpipe. Straight into this passage, which is the windpipe. This is the entrance to the windpipe through here. This is the entrance to the food pipe. When food comes down, it pushes this cover closed, sealed tight. It goes past the windpipe into the food pipe. When air comes, this passage opens up and the air comes. The air could come down through the mouth, and the air could come down through the nose, which also goes into the windpipe. Right? Now, it's important to note that the top of the veshet we're looking now through the back of the animal. This is the top of the veshet. It narrows and it comes down into the regular veshet. There are different tissues over here. The top is called the turbot haveshet. There are three types of tissue. On the top there's a reddish muscle. In the middle there's another strand of muscle. And on the bottom there's a regular muscle of the veshet. The top section, if you cut it across, so the meat will fold outwards. The middle section, if you cut across, it will stand in place. The lowest section, if you cut across, the muscle will fold towards the inside. Those are the simonim given in the Gemara to tell which parts of the veshet we're shechting through, if it's kosher for shechita or not. The top two sections are possible for shechita. That's the part that folds outward and the part that stands up straight. The lower one that folds inside is kosher for shechita. The shechita is from the other direction here, but you examine, if you're too close to the top, you examine the veshet. Now, stop. There's a line across here, and there's a line across here. This is the top section of the turbot haveshet. I cut away a lot of it before. This is the middle section between the two lines, and this is the lower section from here down. The shechita is kosher. All right?
Show me exactly from where down the street is kosher.
From this line, the color of the flesh is different. Here it's a pinkish red. Here it's more of a redder red, and here the red is still deeper. This is the basar that folds outward when you cut it. You could see it's folding outward right now. This is the basar that when it's cut it stands in one place, and below this line the basar will fold inward, and this is called the makom that's kosher for shechita. You'll notice that it's even exactly with the bump over here. We'll peel all these membranes away and you'll see that much more clearly. The bump on this side, which is the top of the makom hashchita in the kone. The highest part that you could shecht in the kone is this bump. The highest part that could be geschochten in the veshet is this lower line over here. They're fairly even. I said before, this is the tabas hakdoila. This here. The large tabas. It goes all around. This is the helmet, the koiva. Looks like a soldier's helmet. On top we have the koiva cotton, the epiglottis. On this side you can see how it seals the opening to the kone shut. It has to cut through both simonim. The kone here and the veshet behind it. If it shechts towards the top, so you have to be careful not to go higher than this point. This is the bulge. Above this is the shipui, the slope of this koiva. And as I said before, you have to make sure not to go above the point which separates the turbot haveshet from the veshet. I think it's more clear now that I peeled away a membrane or two. Huh?
Yeah.
You see this line, this pink skin is the pure veshet. The middle section is the first section where it stands of the turbot haveshet. The upper one is the uppermost section. Or the larynx, the voice box. These are the two bumps that the Gemara speaks of, which is the limiting upper limit of the shechita. These are the chiti. 1, 2. These are the vocal cords. Inside these are muscle that control, expand, and contract the cords. These bumps are the chiti. By the way, if you see this piece of cartilage here, and this piece of cartilage, that white material, this is what I cut through to open up the voice box. That's the back part of the tabas hakdoila. When we say the tabas hakdoila encloses the kone completely, you can see it after I cut it through. How it's cartilage all the way around. So that the shechita cannot be any higher. If it touches the tabas, the chitin, poga v'chiti, it's treifot. 8 teeth on the bottom. On top there's no teeth. Here's the space. And here are the molars in the back. These teeth the animal uses to rip out the grasses and swallows it down. When it brings it back up, it uses these teeth to chew it, to grind the cud, the malagera, so that it could be fully digested. The Gemara says that there are two pulin, bean-shaped bumps at the base of the skull. The highest of the chulyas, of the vertebrae of the sheder, are attached to this skull, to these shnei pulin. You can see over here the split between the first vertebra and the second. This is the first chulya, heavy, thick chulya, and the second over here. The chut hasheder runs in the middle of these chulyas. I'll show you the chut hasheder. This material is the spinal cord. It's very important for Hilchos Treifos because up till those shnei pulin, the chut hasheder has the halacha of moyach, and the neck of mashu is matriv. Below the shnei pulin, it has the halacha of chut hasheder. I said before that psukas ruba is matriv. Huh? You got it?
Yeah.
Sheder emerging from the brain. You see, cut away one of the two pulin, the beam-like structures at the end of the head, which are considered the dividing mark between the brain and the chut hasheder. That part that you see is still considered brain because it's more towards the head. It's above the pool. Take a look over here. Can you see in between?
Yeah.
You see the skin. This is a thick skin. It's called the dura mater, the thick covering, hard covering. That's the krum ha'elyon. This material over here is the krum ha'elyon shel hamoyach. If you can see it, it goes all the way and it surrounds the brain on the sides of the brain.
I got the command.
Thin skin that encloses the brain, there's a skin over here. If the skin would be taken away, there would be gray and white matter oozing out all over. This is the soft pia mater, the soft covering of the brain, the krum ha'tachtay. This is the krum ha'elyon. Right?
Yeah.
Thick, hard, of upper skin, and this is the krum ha'tachtay. Now we'll soon see the moyach godel and the moyach cotton. Under that is the gray matter of the brain.
Okay, give the halachas.
If either there's a hole in the krum ha'elyon or the krum ha'tachtay, the brain is not nitchah. It still has the krum over it. If both membranes are penetrated by a hole, then it's considered a treif. Yes. Moich godel, moich cotton, and the upper part of the chut hasheder, the medulla oblongata, that's all b'mashahu. This krum ha'elyon over here, which is the krum ha'chitzain of the chut hasheder, here it is. It's the same as the krum ha'elyon of the moyach. We said it before. Agav, but the entire lower jaw, this piece over here, is cut off here, including the meat that surrounds it. That's all the l'chayayim. This goes to the koyed. The tongue, the meat, cheek meat, and the lower jaw goes to the kohen. That's the third of the matnes kahuna, the l'chayayim. Here's another picture of the kone veshet inside of the neck. The mokum hashchita extends from about here. This is the thyroid gland covering the tabas hagdoila, and it goes all the way down to here, where the first lobe of the lung, the una hamispatzelis, hits the kone. At that point, you can't shecht any longer. This is a cutaway of the gargeris. The gargeris is the full name for the windpipe. The kone actually refers to the thick, strong skin inside of the rings of cartilage, which are called tabois. You can see over here, cutaway of the rings. This larger piece of cartilage is called the koiva, And this over here, number 40, is the tabas hagdoila, the single ring that goes completely around the kone. This is a cutaway of the brain. This moyach godo, the cerebrum, is over here. This is the moyach cotton, the cerebellum. And this white line is the medulla. That's the part of the brain that goes into the chut hashedra. This over here is the bump at the end of the skull, which we call the pulin. At this point, the brain changes from the status of moyach to the status of chut hashedra, and the dinim for treifos are different. That will be explained later. This is the main vein running from the body into the head. It brings the blood back to the heart. This is the artery that brings the blood to the head. These together are called vriden. This is cut before the kone is fully cut, and the red one, the artery, is first cut after the kone and the veshet are cut through. By a bird, this vrid is the one that the Tana of Yehuda holds must be cut in addition to the kone and the veshet.
Okay.
This is a picture of the cartilage parts of the kone, the gargeris. These are the shorter tabois, which are open at the back. This is the bas hagdoila, that's fully closed. This is the koiva, the helmet-like piece of cartilage that covers the front. This is the widest part of it, and when it slopes back, this section is called shipui, the sloping part of the koiva. This little projection over here is the koiva cotton, the epiglottis that seals the windpipe when food is being eaten. This is the same thing, but with muscles covering parts of the koiva. This is the way we see it when we open up an animal. We have to pull away all the muscles to get the other picture. Now, this is a view looking down from the mouth in the direction of the kone and veshet. This is the tongue, and the food comes to the back of the tongue. The first passage downward is the windpipe, the kone. As we look into the kone, we see at the top of it these two bumps and this over here. This is the epiglottis, the koiva cotton. It folds over and joins these two to make a perfect seal that no food could get down. You see two little bumps over here inside. These are the vocal cords, or the chitin, as the Gemara called them, which is the highest place where the shechita could take place. Behind this is the food pipe, the veshet. This top section of it has a different type of tissue. It's called the turbitz veshet, the opening. You could see the red outer wall and the white inner wall. Behind this you can see the kone going down towards the... This is the lung behind the rib cage. This is the liver. This is the first organ of the lower part of the body. This is the keva, fourth stomach. And these are the dakim, the curly small intestine. This is the chalchoiles, which carries the waste out of the body. This is some of the hadura de kanta, the smooth kishke, which is the beginning of the large intestine. Here you could see the kone, the kone and the veshet entering the cholol, the interior of the body.